Hello, welcome back to Reading with Mo, and welcome to my reading wrap up for everything that I got to in the month of October. In October, I took part in Victober. I had a very ambitious TBR for that, and I only ended up getting to 2 of the books from there, but for good reason. I didn't really want to rush them. I haven't read a lot of classics lately, and I just really took my time with them. I will be actually doing a standalone review, separate dedicated video for each of those books, so look out for that in the next upcoming weeks. So altogether in the month of October, I completed 12 books. I had 5 DNFs, so there's 5 books I did not finish that I started, and I permanently have decided, or at least for now, that I don't want to finish them. And then there's 4 books that I'm currently reading, taking those into the month of November. Of my star ratings, I only gave 2 separate star ratings, so no 1s and 2s. For the month, I had 7 3-star reads, so I don't know. That's kind of mid, right, for the month? I don't know. I didn't have any books that were like super stand out, but I did have 5 4-star books, and those books were all good. So I will share my thoughts on all of those with you guys. Let's go ahead and start with the 5 DNFs. So first we have The Bells by Lacey N. Dunham. This book came out this year. It is a debut novel. It's in the genre of like dark academia, historical fiction. I listened to this book on audiobook, and I just felt like it wasn't that interesting, not that engaging. It didn't really keep my interest, unfortunately. It was kind of slow. This is a mystery book that takes place at this elite women's college in the 1950s. We are kind of following a larger cast of characters. There's 6 freshmen, and I felt like I wasn't really emotionally invested in any of them, unfortunately. If you like a slow burn with a very gradual emotional buildup, then maybe this is a book that you would like. If you're into something that kind of looks at the darker side of female friendships, then maybe you'll like this. And I also could see some lovers of dark academia liking this. I always feel like I'm gonna like dark academia books more than I do, and I keep picking them up. I often find that they aren't books that I generally tend to rate super high. Next DNF is Joy Moody is Out of Time by Karen Main. This was a mystery thriller audiobook, a new release for this year that I listened to. We're following Joy Moody, and she's raising her twin daughters, Cassie and Andy, under this weird pretense that they're from the year 2050 and that they're destined for this revolution. All at the same time, all 3 of them are running this laundromat. And unfortunately, Joy dies when the girls turn 21 on the girls' 21st birthday. And they are learning that their whole life pretty much has been centered around a lie. I think going into this, the description kind of sounded like it could be a little bit more sci-fi, time travel, quirky, fun, but I think the actual story is a bit heavier, and it's more in the like emotional mystery territory. I was hoping for some science fiction element, at least a little bit, to be incorporated into the book, and I think that's kind of where my expectations were. So when that didn't deliver, I just kind of ended up being a little bit bored, and I wasn't as interested, and I felt like the setup was a little bit dragging. If you're into character-driven mysteries or domestic suspense, then maybe this is something that you would like. Next, we have Muscle Man by Jordan Castro. This was a new release this year. It falls in the contemporary genre, academic fiction, and we're following our main character, Harold. He is a literature professor at this small liberal arts college, and we're following him over the course of just one afternoon as he's like wandering around the campus, going to meetings, doing all this random stuff. But there's supposed to be like this twist that happens, and honestly I didn't even get that far. I was pretty bored. There's just not much going on. It's just a lot of internal monologue that I didn't find particularly interesting. Following someone over the course of just what seems like a regular day. I only got like 12% into this book, so I just couldn't keep going. I was just bored. I tried to look up some spoilers of what the twist was or what happens, and I just didn't care enough to even like figure it out. And I think because it's so new, I wasn't able to find any spoiler reviews on this book yet. I don't know who exactly this book is for. I guess someone who doesn't really care too much about having too much plot, but really enjoys more introspective books, very internal monologue, really looking at the character's psyche. And maybe if you like something that's a little bit on like the drier side of being funny, then maybe you will like it. But yeah, I'm having a hard time finding someone I could come up to mind that I think I would recommend this book to specifically. The next book I DNF'd was a young adult romantasy, which honestly isn't very surprising because it's not really a genre that is something I enjoy a lot, but I had seen the cover for this one on Instagram around, and I specifically had seen a really beautiful special edition, but knowing myself, I was like, I'm gonna give the audiobook a try first before I spend actual money on this book, and that book is Thorn Season by Kiara Azar. I did not get very far into this audiobook before I decided to put it down, only about 15%. We are following this young woman who has this secret ability that she's hiding. Even though she's like, part of this powerful family, she has to keep it a secret because it's dangerous. And then she's summoned to the Rose season at the royal court. I don't really read a lot of young adult books, as I've mentioned before, but every once in a while I'll try them out just to kind of test my temperature on how I'm feeling about them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this. It's just young adult isn't a tone that I enjoy reading a lot anymore. And it's not my preference. I didn't really want to commit as well because I believe this is supposed to be like a whole series. And because I wasn't loving it from the jump, I just didn't really want to commit to reading this whole series. But if you do like romantasy, specifically in the young adult genre with like a slow burn, and that's like character driven and has court intrigue, then this may be something that you would enjoy. The last book that I didn't finish in the month of October is The Peculiar Garden of Harriet Hunt by Chelsea Iverson. This is a historical fiction book with some magical realism elements in it. Very light, I would say, but it is definitely a part of the plot. We're following Harriet Hunt. She's this young woman and she's living alone in her mansion, or like this Victorian estate, because it's historical, and she very much keeps to herself. She likes to be alone. She takes care of this like wild but also sentient garden, and she is just kind of like dealing with her father who has disappeared and left her. We don't really know why, but we do know they didn't have a good relationship. I didn't get that far into, well, I did get far into the book, like 44%. I actually made it pretty far into this book before I put it down. But I believe her father was like abusive or had some sort of like backstory with that. I'm not the biggest fan of magical realism or like, books that incorporate that in a way where it's kind of just like normal everyday world, but then we have these random little unexplained elements, and it's just never something that I've found that I've enjoyed a lot when I've come across it in books. Heather herself as a main character, I just didn't find her that interesting. She didn't have a lot of agency for herself, and the pacing of the book was slow. So I feel like even though I was already halfway into it, I just knew like if I finish this, I'm maybe gonna give it a 3-star rating, and I really just wanted to move on to something else that I would enjoy potentially more. If you do like fantasy books that are very low level, as far as like the fantastical elements, or if you like to read literary fiction but you want to try something that's like just a little bit tweaked a little differently, if you get what I mean, then maybe this is something you would like. Or if you like something that's very character driven, because we're mainly just focusing on Harriet and like her inner journey, we are dealing with like some other outside elements going on as well, like her feeling like she needs to get married because there's like this whole subplot going on with her father being missing, and people thinking maybe like, I don't know if they thought she had something to do with it or if she just knew more than she was saying. I don't know, honestly. I made it to 44%, but I can tell you I did not listen actively to all 44% that I did listen to. Next, we have a nonfiction book, and that is The Afro-Minimalist Guide to Living with Less by Christine Platt. This book came out back in 2021. It's in the more like self-help, personal development genre, something that I don't really pick up a lot, but when it has, a very nice cover, as I've seen on Instagram, and it has to do with living simply, being minimal, those are topics that do interest me. So I picked this one up on audiobook. I listened to it. It was not a long audiobook at all. Like I think I listened to this over the course of like a day or two. This is not the first book that I've listened to or read that has gone over the topic of like minimalism, living with less, being content, but this one is kind of more like mixed with some cultural awareness and a little bit how about like living intentionally while still honoring like your own identity and your own heritage. Christine in the book is kind of like challenging the mainstream idea of minimalism and how it isn't like a one size fits all that really works for everybody, but how she's tailored it to herself, and then giving like some practical tips on how to like declutter your house, not just your house, but like your mind and your habits. And it's not just focused on like material things that are things that you can be minimal about or more intentional about. She is very much an advocate for just creating space for the things that really matter in your life. I liked that it was a very inclusive look at the whole minimalism culture, minimalism movement. I did end up giving it a 3-star rating though, because I felt like I didn't really learn anything or take away anything that I didn't already know. It was kind of just, reinforcement of things that I pretty much already knew or had heard before for the most part. But I am someone who is very familiar with, a lot of decluttering and minimalist literature, and like I've watched the documentaries, I've watched the YouTube channels. But if you're someone who is new to the whole minimalism idea, I think this would potentially be a good place for you to start. I did like how it's kind of framed more culturally. She comes from it as the perspective of being like an Afro minimalist. My next 3-star read was Little Movements by Lauren Morrow. This was a contemporary lit fic novel. We're following our main character, Layla. She is getting her shot to be a choreographer, and she has to move to rural Vermont. So she's leaving behind her life that she has in Brooklyn with her, I believe it was her husband, yes, that she was leaving behind there, to be able to take this shot that she's always dreamed of. And she's having to deal with a lot of pressure because of, the art and race and identity, and especially where she's at, it's a mostly white institution. As she gets there, there's a lot of unexpected things that she ends up having to deal with, like some issues with her marriage and some issues with the truth behind some of the things with the residency that she's taking a part in. And also there's another third thing that I don't know if it's in the synopsis, so I don't want to say it, but yeah, she's really having to go through a lot and just really figuring out like what is she willing to sacrifice. I liked having such a like insider look at the world of dance and choreography as someone who I haven't done anything like that in a long time, but when I was in high school, I did do dance, and it was something that I've always been interested in. I'm watching Dancing with the Stars currently right now on TV, and so I did like that. I haven't read anything about those topics in a book in a long time. Overall, though, I still ended up giving this book a 3-star rating because I felt like the pace was a little bit slow for me, in my opinion. It does handle a lot of heavy topics, but because it's juggling like so many different heavy topics, I felt like it would have been better maybe to focus on less different things that she had going on and really focus on them more. But this is a very short novel. It was not a long audiobook to listen to, so I feel like the author was very ambitious with all of the different types of topics that she was covering in this book. If you're into books that kind of center around the arts and creativity, if you like character-driven books if you like literary fiction, I feel like this is something that you could enjoy. My next 3-star read was Red Clay by Charles B. Fancher. This is a historical fiction novel. It takes place in 1943 Alabama, or at least that's where it starts. And we are starting off with this older white woman, and she walks into the funeral of a formerly enslaved black man, and she goes up to his granddaughter and she says, "A lifetime ago, my family owned yours." And that opens the door to all these buried secrets coming out. And then the story, it shifts back in time to 1840 or 1864. And we're following the story of a young boy who is enslaved. His name is Felix, and he's on the Red Clay plantation. And while he's there, he has to deal with the typical things that you would have to deal with as being a slave in this time, like the war that's going on, being a slave, emancipation, all these different things. And his life ends up kind of being intertwined with the lives of the family on the plantation that owns him. I feel like this book felt very grounded. It felt very realistic. It felt very much like a lot of detail of the historical times was included, and it felt real. I don't know how much further to describe that, but it felt very realistic. Being a slave narrative, it does go over those typical themes that you would expect to come with the genre, like race, power, survival, family bonds. I pick up slave narratives every once in a while. To be honest, they're not my favorite thing to pick up, but I do like to dabble every once in a while and kind of see what's out there, see what's new being published in the genre. And I find though that I often do end up giving them a 3-star rating because I feel like after you've read so many, they do kind of all follow a certain kind of formula. And what I look for, I guess, when I pick them up now is for something that really can make me very emotionally invested in the book, or I don't know, kind of just brings a different perspective on the genre, does something new. And with this book, I just felt like it felt very similar to things that I have read before in this genre. I didn't feel like it did anything new. While it didn't do anything bad, it just didn't do anything to really stand out or be memorable from other books in this type of genre. But if you do like historical fiction books that are set in the American South, I do think that this is a book that you potentially could like. If you like multi-generational stories, which are stories I do lean towards, this is also something that you might like. And I definitely feel like this is a book that could be good for like a book club. Like when I read this, like it definitely seems like something that would fall within those books that are chosen for book clubs. My next 3-star read was Hemlock and Silver. This is a new release fantasy novel released this year by Tim Kingfisher. This book is a retelling or reimagining of the Snow White story. We are following our main character, Anja, who is this healer who actually herself regularly drinks poison to be able to save others. And she gets summoned to help the princess of this kingdom, and the princess is going through this illness, and the king is very worried about her and takes on Anja to try to figure out what's going on with her, what's wrong with her, why is she dying. I don't want to say too much to give away like what I was going to say might give away one of the plot points. But like I said, this book is a reimagining of Snow White. Not exactly the same, but you can see a lot of the similar elements in the book. It is kind of a more darker reimagining of the tale, and it blends like science and stuff about poisons and a lot of like court intrigue and like in Snow White that has the whole thing with the mirrors. So I don't think that's saying a spoiler. It's like there is that element in the book as well. I think for a retelling, especially because I'm not a huge fairy tale retelling person, I think that Tim Kingfisher did pretty well, and I feel like it's felt like a fresh take on the Snow White retelling. I honestly can't remember any other books I've read specifically that were a Snow White retelling. I did like Anja as a character. I felt like she was very refreshing. She's a bit different than your typical main character in a book like this. She's very unusual. She's older than what your typical lead in a fantasy novel would be, and she's very much into she's very much into science, and she's a very smart character to read from. Overall, I did give it a 3-star rating because while I felt like it was okay in the moment to listen to, I wasn't overly invested or cared that much about the plot that was going on. I'm kind of just there for the vibes. The mirror elements was interesting when that came in to play, but I don't know. It just was like okay to me. I just don't feel like this book is going to be very lifelong memorable to me personally. But if you do love fairy tale retellings, this is definitely a book that I would recommend, especially if you like fantasy that's kind of like on the more darker, moodier side. Then this could be right up your alley. My next 3-star read was another audiobook I listened to, and that was A Theory in Dreaming by Ava Reed. This was a young adult book. It was the sequel to A Study in Drowning. And this book is kind of like in the dark academia genre, with some fantasy. Not fantasy so much, but like romantasy, I would say lightly. We are continuing off where we left off in the first book. So in A Study in Drowning, we're following Effie, and she's this young architecture student who wins a scholarship or like this contest to redesign the house or estate of her favorite author. And while she's doing that, she uncovers some dark secrets along the way. So now we're in the second book without any spoilers, but we are following her as she is going back to the college that she was in, and we're also following another student at this college, which I won't say anything about, but his name's Preston. So we're getting 2 perspectives in this book, and we are following them as they are exposing some truths that put them in some dangerous positions. I can't really say much more than that without getting into too much spoilers, but this book does have a portrayal of mental health, specifically like struggles with depression, imposter syndrome, trauma, And I feel like that those topics were handled very well. And I did appreciate that that's something that was heavily explored in the book, but because it is something, especially when you're targeting a young adult audience, that a lot of not just adults, but young adults as well are going through these kinds of issues. So I did appreciate the novel for that. For me, I don't know why this one just felt like, I think I gave A Study in Drowning like a 4-star rating, but I only gave this one 3 because I just felt like it dragged. I took so long to read this book. It took me forever to get through it. Like every time I would sit down, I couldn't read more than like maybe like a handful of pages at a time. I don't know why. I just felt like it was dragging. For me, I felt like it just lost some of the spark that I enjoyed in the first book. Not to say that I didn't enjoy this book, but I was hoping to enjoy it more than I did. I felt like some of the world building was a little bit lacking to me, but we are very much just really just taking most of the book just takes place strictly at this college campus that the students are at. Especially with Effie, I mean, I understand that she has some mental stuff that she's going through and dealing with in this book, so I'm not like all the way mad about it, but I just felt like she didn't have really a lot of agency. I just felt like she was kind of just there half the time, which I understand because she's going through a lot of stuff mentally, but it just felt like I wish she had a little bit more agency, especially compared to where we see her character arc go through in the first book. But if you do like dark academia books, this is a duology that I would say maybe try out and see how you feel about it. If you like fantasy where it's kind of very light on the fantasy, it's not like super fantastical, but there are like some of those kinds of elements in the book, then I think you would like it. And while it is targeted towards a young adult age range, I do feel like the writing, maybe because they are like a little bit older, on the older side of young adult, they're in college. I think that a lot of adult readers will appreciate the book for that and be able to be a little bit more into it. My next 3-star read was The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. I hope I said that right. And in this book, it's like a contemporary fiction novel. We're following 5 different Black women who are navigating different things in their lives, like careers, family, relationships, motherhood, and it takes place over 2 decades, partially in New York and partially in Los Angeles. We're following the different things over the decades that test their friendships, things like loss and ambition and family struggles and just their dynamics within the friend group over, like I said, over the period of like 2 decades. If you like very character heavy books, I think you'll like this book. We're following 5 different characters and they each have a lot going on in their lives, which is pro and a con when it came to this book for me personally. What I did like was interesting is one of the main characters' name was Monique, and that's my name, as you guys know, reading with Mo. Mo is short for Monique, and I don't really come across that a lot in books, so that was interesting. And another random side note, there was a character named Warren in the book, which is my husband's name. They weren't together in this book, but I thought that was funny because both of those names aren't ones I come across very frequently in books, and for both our names to be in one, I thought was just like a random coincidence. But back to the book review, I feel like there were so many characters that we're following. I feel like it was a little bit hard to keep all of their storylines straight for me personally. I also felt like the pacing was interesting because it's not linear. We are going back and forth and then back and forth. Like we're jumping around different years within these 2 decades, like pretty frequently. So because of that, and also I was listening to it on audiobook, it was a little bit hard for me to follow the story and kind of remember like what's going on with each person's life, especially when we're following 5 characters and we're getting perspectives from all of them jumping around. So I didn't like that. But I did like the themes of like friendship and growth that were going on within the book. I also did feel like this was a very emotional book. Maybe if I read it physically, I would have gotten a little bit more out of it because I just would have had that extra like paying attention to it that comes with reading a book for me physically over listening to it. There's not a lot of plot in the book. It's kind of more so we're just like following their lives. It's very wide spanning. Like I said, 20 years of their lives. And one thing I also didn't like was kind of like towards the end, something happens with one of the characters. I won't give a spoiler or anything or say who, and I was just so confused, and I was trying to look up like spoiler reviews, but because it's a very new release, there's not a lot of those available yet. But I was kind of confused. I was trying to figure out what exactly happened with one of the characters. It's like, did I miss something because I was listening to it on audiobook? Like, did I like just not catch something. But yeah, that was something that I didn't really like about the book there. But I think that if you do like following books that follow friendship dynamics, that are very character driven, literary fiction, then this is something that you would like. I've been seeing this book a lot on all over social media, so I feel like this book is doing pretty well, and I feel like it's finding its audience, which is great. Okay, so lastly, for my 3-star reads, we have another new release called Pick a Color by Suvankam Thamavongsa. I really hope I said that right, but I probably butchered their name. And this is a contemporary fiction book. It's a very short book. I listened to this on audiobook. I think the audiobook itself was only maybe like 6 hours. It's taking place over the period of just like one 24-hour period, so it makes sense that it's a shorter book. It takes place in a nail salon. All of the nail salon workers there go by the same name of Susan. And that includes the manager whose actual name is Ning. And she has an interesting story. She was like a former boxer, and now she's just dealing with everything that comes emotionally and socially, like dynamic wise, with her staff and her clients and even her own past. This book is very introspective, and it's a lot of just her thinking about the interactions she's had in life, just making observations about her life. And it's a very subtle book, I would say. What I liked about the book was it was a very unique setting from other things that I have read recently or before, and that is taking place in the nail shop, which, while I don't work in a nail shop specifically, I do work in a salon. So I feel like there was a lot of things that I felt were relatable, even though myself, I'm not an immigrant, but working in that field, I definitely can understand a lot that the main character was going through. And the book is just giving us some insight into the immigrant experience. Like I mentioned before, this is a very quiet book, so I don't know if it's going to really have that much of a lasting impact on me, but I don't regret having read it. I think that with the ending kind of being ambiguous, we were just here for the ride, and there's not a lot of clear resolutions at the end. We're just here to experience a day in Ning's life. If you like introspective books that are on like the immigrant experience and working class narratives, books that are short, then and that kind of package all of that in a very short package, then I think this is a book you would enjoy. Okay, so now on to books that I enjoyed a bit more, and these are the 4-star ratings for the month. I gave 5 books 4-star ratings. So first we have Hidden Libraries, which this is a nonfiction book, and it takes you all around the globe, and you get to learn about 50 of these little known libraries that are really cool and unique, that majority of them I had never heard of before. Like, there's one that's like a little treehouse mini library in Idaho, and there's even like a little book trove in the South Pole. So while most of these realistically I'm never gonna get to, I did come across a few that I think maybe one day I will visit if I, already happen to be in the area. There's a lot of photographs that come in this book. I'm thinking about maybe doing like a whole standalone review on this book at the end of the month as well, so maybe I won't talk about it too much right now, but I really did enjoy this book, and it's very visually beautiful, and it's very globally inclusive, diverse. There's these libraries, they feature all over the world, literally. The only thing that I would say that was kind of is against it, but it's also just the nature of the kind of book it is, because we are featuring 50 different books. Each one kind of 50 different libraries. Each one just gets a very brief essay. So we're not really going like really in depth with any of these books, just a few pages. So it's kind of a little bit more of a superficial look at all of these libraries. And hidden is very much a word that is good to describe these libraries, because some of them are non-existent now, and some of them are like impossible to get to for the average person, but altogether I found them very interesting. If you're someone who enjoys books about books, I especially do, especially nonfiction books, you are a book lover, you're a bibliophile, then this is something that I think you would enjoy to have on your shelves. It makes a good coffee table book if you're into that kind of thing. Also, if you're looking for like a gift for somebody who likes to read, I feel like this is a pretty safe book to get them. They probably don't have it, and it's something that most book lovers would appreciate having on their shelves. Next, we have The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. Now, this book I was going to do a whole standalone review on. Well, I am going to. It's going to be spoiler and spoiler it's going to have spoilers, but there'll be a spoiler-free section as well. So I'm not going to go too in-depth on my review on this book in this video, but you know, I will talk about it in case you don't want to watch like a whole possibly 10-minute video on this single book, or you're not interested in it. I picked this up as part of Victober, which is a Victorian book readathon that takes place every October here on BookTube. And I had not read anything by Anne Bronte before. I believe she has like one other book that she's published. And I really enjoyed this book. We are following our main character, Helen, and she moves into this like old crumbling mansion estate called Wildfell Hall, and she has everybody in town talking about her. She's quiet, independent, and she really just doesn't care too much what people think about her. And she definitely has some secrets that she's hiding and that we of course uncover along the journey of reading about her story. And we're also we're actually reading her story from mostly the perspective of a local farmer whose name's Gilbert, and he befriends her and gets to uncover the truth behind her backstory and what she has to do there. She's there with her son. And this book has a very simple Gothic setup, but it was really something revolutionary. I'm so excited to deep dive into this book with you guys in a book talk soon. I really love this book. Dealing with Helen, and it's so hard to talk about this without even giving spoilers, but there is a character in this book that had me so aggravated. I don't know if I should say it or not because it could technically be included in spoilers. But yeah, there were times I was reading this book that I was getting so much anxiety that I was so mad and frustrated for Helen. And I just really wanted this girl to have a good ending. We are following someone, Helen as a character, she's a very strong, independent protagonist. And I love that so much. I feel like this book was definitely ahead of its time. I heard that there was a lot of scandal mixed up in the publishing of this book, even with the author's own sister not wanting it to be published because of fear of how it would be perceived by others. So in that case, like, you know, this book does have a lot of literary significance as well. The reason why I did give it a 4-star rating was I did feel like the pacing was a little bit slow. It takes place in the form of a lot of long letters kind of explaining things for you. And it kind of felt a little bit drawn out in that way. There's not a lot of action, but for me, I don't need a lot of action in my books. I just need them to be interesting. However you want to make it interesting. It doesn't have to be a lot of action, but I just have to really care about the characters, which I feel like Anne Bronte did. I think that were I to reread this book again, maybe I would even potentially give it a 5-star rating on a further deep dive read. So we'll see. If you're into classic books, if you like books that touch on feminist topics, if you like books that are very character driven, what else? Maybe if you're even in like a book club, this could be a good book for you to pick up. And it does have like some Gothic, atmospheric, mysterious elements. And I love reading books with that and that cover those kind of topics. I'm back from a pizza break. Hopefully I don't have any food on my mouth, but I didn't expect to be talking about books this long, but I have a lot of thoughts that I wanted to share with you guys, and I needed a food break. But we're still on my 4-star reads, and next up we have Heart the Lover by Lily King. Lily King is a very prolific writer. This is my first Lily King book, but Writers and Lovers has been on my radar, and after reading this book, I'm pretty sure I'll be picking that one up eventually. This is her new release this year. It's a literary fiction book, and we're following our main character, Jordan. She is a senior. Why am I blanking now if it was senior in college or high school? But I'm pretty sure it was college. She has 2 classmates that her life becomes intertwined with, Sam and Yash, and we are following their triangle of friendship, ambition, and romance. Their connection is very intense and it's complicated. They're very intellectually minded people, I would say, and there are a lot of emotions that they have to navigate within their friendships with each other. Decades later, after they're done with school, we see that Jordan, she has gone on to become a successful author. She's a mother, and now she's kind of revisiting these choices that she made when she was young that have really reshaped her life, and we get to see all that was going on during that time. This is a book that if you're gonna read, I would definitely recommend picking up the physical book. I wish personally myself I had done physical instead of audiobook. I think it would have been a little bit more emotionally impactful to me, and I would ideally like to reread this book again physically with my eyeballs. Like, this was a really good book. The characters, they just felt so real. And I know I say that multiple times and some people are like, what does that even mean? But it just means like such real people. Like I could sit down in a room with this person randomly and they would just be a real person. Like they're just very complex and relatable characters. The way that Licking handles like the time span of her story, I feel like was done very well. And I also really loved about the book that her writing style, I feel like, was very engaging and definitely kept my attention while listening to this book. There were some parts of the book that were a little bit slower. If you're not a huge fan of the whole love triangle trope, maybe this isn't something you would like, but I don't mind it. I feel like if it's done well, and I feel like she really gave complexity to all of these characters that I appreciated. It's not very action driven, but this is a very like emotional and character driven story. If you like reading romance books that are very complex, like I would not put this book in the romance genre, but it is romance leaning. So I feel like this is the kind of romance that I prefer to read more so than just like your regular contemporary women's fiction type of romance books, like where how she does it here is exactly what I like when I'm looking for romance. It's not all pretty, it's not perfect, and the endings can be kind of ambiguous for people, but I just really enjoy the complexity of it. My next 4-star read is A Guardian and a Thief, and this book just came out recently and also just got announced as an Oprah book club pick. I had this on my radar when it first came out and I thought it sounded very interesting. The author is Megha Majumdar. And this book, it takes place in like a near future Calcutta. And it is very climate ravaged. And we're following our main character, Ma, and her young daughter, Mishti, and Ma's father, Dadu, as they are trying to escape to America, which they have the opportunity to do in a matter of days. But these documents that they really need, their like passports and stuff, get stolen. And so we're following also another timeline of another character. He's a young man. His name is Boomba. Has a very hard, rough life, and he's very desperate. And he will do whatever he needs to try to take care of himself and his family. So we're following these two very tension-filled storylines, and it's on a deadline because, like I said, the main family that we're following, their flight to leave is in 7 days. They need all of this. They need to find their passports that were stolen quickly so that they can leave. They're literally running out of food. It's not like this is a very like novel about survival, because they don't take this very lightly at all. These characters in this book were so morally gray and complex. If you love morally gray characters, this book is good for you, because it's pretty much every character in this book. It's hard to, there's no character that is just endearing or you like every time we switch back and forth in perspectives, you really see like no one is all the way good, no one's all the way evil. At the end of the day, everyone's kind of just looking out for themselves and trying to survive. The atmosphere was good. There was just so much energy and seeing like the dangers, and they did feel like true dangers, and seeing just the different like things that were going on socially at the time. It's a very high stakes plot, and so it made this book very easy to fly through. It also tackles a lot of big issues like inequality, immigration, migration, kind of just like general like generational responsibilities to each other. This book is definitely filled with a lot of social commentary, and I'd definitely be interested to go online and read some more perspectives and deep dives and views from other people who have read this book. Me, I feel like the story was short, which did benefit to it, but I think it also could have benefited from being just a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit longer, and potentially I could have given this book a 5-star rating. The heavy themes, and I think also the other thing that kind of kept me from giving it a 5-star rating was the ending. And obviously I'm not going to give you guys any spoilers, but it's not just a like they all lived happily ever after ending, and I'm still processing how I feel about how wild of an ending that was. Like I did not see that coming in. It's no really just like clear-cut good versus bad with these stories. These characters are very, very, very morally ambiguous, and I cannot stress that enough. But you also like really, you can understand the reasoning for the choices that they make and why they do the things that they do. I would highly recommend this to anybody who likes literary fiction that definitely deals with complex issues, especially morally complex issues, and those who like to read about, social issues within the books that they read. And I feel like this would make a very good book club book because it gives you a lot of things that you could really deep dive and discuss with other people. Last but not least, we have my other Victober read, and that was Hester by Margaret Oliphant. This was another classic from the 1800s. And I mentioned before, but I'll mention again, I am going to be doing a standalone review for this filled with some spoiler-free and spoilery sections. So I will just briefly touch on it. Now, I did enjoy this book. It took me a while to read though, because I was reading just 3 chapters a day, and I finished it on the very last day of the month, like literally the very last day. I was determined I was not going to take this book into November. That way I could start talking about it and my thoughts about it with you guys. I had never heard about Margaret Oliphant before. She's definitely a more underrated Victorian author, but this was the group pick for the month. So I decided to pick it up. I ordered my copy from Blackwell's, and I'm really glad that I picked this up. This story is following our main character, Hester Vernon, and she is going to live with some distant relatives of hers. She's living in this house that's owned by Catherine Vernon, who is this very powerful matriarch type figure in their neighborhood of Redborough, and she rescued the family's bank from ruin. So that's kind of what solidified her position in the hierarchy of their family. Catherine as a character, she's very respected, but she's also very feared too, and her family just talks so badly about her behind her back. It's crazy how ungrateful like some of the people in her family are for the things that she does for them, but she kind of enjoys it, so I don't feel bad for her at all. We definitely are looking at the world that Hester is growing up in that has to do with like certain societal expectations and money and duty, and everybody just kind of has these underlying feelings of resentment because of not being able to live their lives how they feel like they deserve or would like to live their lives. I really enjoyed Hester and Catherine as strong female characters. They really knew themselves, and especially with Hester, I found it interesting, like she really wanted more for herself than what society would allow her to be at the time. So she was a very interesting character. Like she wanted to work, she wished she could work and earn a living for herself, but because of the social position that her family was in, like that was definitely like a big no-no. Also in the book, we're in this kind of love square. It's not a triangle, it is a love square. And I just didn't honestly care for any of the romantic interests that Hester had in her life. I was like, this girl needs to get out of here and find somebody else, because all of these guys are very mid, if not trash, to say the least. I am happy with how the book ended for Hester. I'm not going to give away any spoilers. There are a large cast of characters in this book, so that could be something that could potentially be a bit difficult for someone reading the book to follow and like remember exactly, because a lot of them are in the same family too, so like they all have the same last name, so that can be kind of confusing. But overall, I did really enjoy this book. If you like Victorian literature, I would definitely recommend this. If you like classic women's fiction, think about like Elizabeth Gaskell, the Bronte sisters, Anthony Trollope, fiction that is set in the Victorian times or written in Victorian times. I think you'll enjoy this book. So if you've made it to this point in the video, congratulations. I really blabbed on for a long time about all these books, longer than I expected to, but I just really want to hopefully provide very valuable, insightful reviews on the books that I'm reading to kind of give you guys a little bit more in depth. I'm working on that because I really just want to be able to provide reviews that really give value to the people that do watch these, and I appreciate all who made it to the end. That's it for my October wrap up. I hope that I have some 5-star reads in November because we are nearing the end of the year and I have not had that many. Let me know what books you guys read in October. If you read anything that you loved or hated, we can talk about it in the comments down below. But that's it for today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.